Hello YouTubers, welcome to Education 360 Degrees. And so today we are going to be tackling Economics and Management Sciences revision video number 4 that deals with businesses. Stay tuned. Economic and Management Sciences, Grade 7, revision video number 4. In this fourth revision, the topic is businesses. Under businesses, we'll look at the following. Number 1, types of businesses. 2, formal and informal businesses. 3, advantages and disadvantages of formal and informal businesses. 4, role of formal and informal businesses as producers and consumers. 5, the effects of natural disasters and health pandemics on businesses. Types of businesses. There are 3 types of businesses that we deal with in grade 7. Manufacturing business, trading business, and service enterprise business. Manufacturing businesses are involved in making or producing goods. They take raw materials and change them into a semi-finished or finished product that they sell at a profit. Examples include a flour mill, a bakery, clothing, or a toy factory. Trading businesses buy goods from a producer, manufacturer, or wholesaler, and they resell them at a profit. Trading businesses usually make a profit from buying and selling goods. They often buy in large quantities, then sell the products in smaller quantities or individually. Service enterprises make a profit from the provision of a service. Examples: hairdressers, plumbers, bricklayer, advertising agencies, insurance companies, and hospitals. Formal businesses. Formal businesses are businesses that are registered. They keep proper accounting records of all transactions according to the requirements of the law. They pay taxes. They need to comply with a lot of legal requirements. They operate from a proper building that they have to rent or buy. Informal businesses. Informal businesses are businesses that are not registered. They do not keep proper accounting records of their transactions. They do not need to pay taxes. They do not need to comply with a lot of legal requirements. They usually do not operate from a proper building that they have to rent or buy. And disadvantages of formal businesses. We'll get started with the advantages. More owners can put more capital together and can share risks involved in business. Workers earn higher wages and a fixed income in the formal sector. More workers can be employed in the formal sector. Formal businesses use more advanced technology and are more productive than informal businesses. Workers in the formal sector are protected by labor laws. Workers can belong to a trade union, protecting them from exploitation. Now we'll move on to disadvantages. More capital is needed to start a formal business. The business needs to be registered and comply with a lot of legal requirements. Proper records of all transactions needs to be kept for tax purposes. Labor laws make it difficult to hire and fire laborers. Trade union activities can lead to higher wages. Most of the formal businesses are in cities and people come from rural areas to the cities. This causes a shortage of housing, water, and other and disadvantages of informal businesses. We'll get started with the advantages. The advantages are informal businesses can easily be started because there are no legal requirements. Most of these businesses can be started with very little capital. They can become a place where entrepreneurs develop business skills. These entrepreneurs do not pay income taxes on their profits. Many times, the informal sector is just a temporary refuge for those waiting for a job opportunity in the formal sector. It provides the poor and unskilled people with a means to survive. And lastly, the informal sector plays an important role in the recycling of waste material by collecting material like scrap metal, glass, and paper and making this available for reuse. And now moving on to the disadvantages. The disadvantages of informal businesses. Firstly, lack of capital makes it difficult to start the business. Income is much lower than in the formal sector. There is no security for workers like pension funds or medical aids. Weather can affect business on the street. Being exposed to the cold and rain on the street can cause illnesses. And lastly, if the owner is sick at home, he or she has no income. Informal businesses as producers and as consumers. We'll get started with formal businesses as producers. They provide a large number of goods and services to people throughout the country. They employ a large number of workers on a permanent basis. They often provide opportunities for their workers to be promoted to better jobs or to learn new skills. And now, informal businesses as producers. They provide a limited range of goods and services. They employ very few workers, and the owner is often the entrepreneur and the only worker. Owners and workers are usually not well educated or skilled. And lastly, there's very little capital that's invested in the business. And now moving on to formal businesses as producers. Formal businesses do not often buy goods and services from informal businesses. They buy goods and services from other formal businesses. Now moving on to informal businesses as consumers. Informal businesses are consumers of formal businesses as they buy most of their products from formal businesses. Disasters and health epidemics on businesses. Natural disasters are acts of nature that can cause great damage and loss of lives. For example, we look at earthquakes, volcanoes, droughts, hurricanes, fires, etc. The effects of natural disasters on a formal business. It may be insured against a natural disaster and might be able to claim back some of the money to cover what is lost. It will probably not be able to trade until the building has been fixed. Their employees could temporarily lose their jobs, especially if they were casual workers. Customers might start buying their goods and services from other businesses. Effects of natural disasters on informal businesses. It would not be insured against the disaster and would not be able to claim for any of their loss. Sometimes they would get compensation from the government. When we speak about compensation, we are speaking about money that is paid out after a loss has been suffered. If they have money saved, they could get back to their business by setting up a makeshift stall on the side of the road. Because they do not carry a lot of stock, they might be able to start up with whatever stock that they had left. And lastly, if they do not have any money saved to buy new stock, they would no longer be able to do that. Epidemics on businesses. Examples of health epidemics include HIV and AIDS, malaria, cholera, and quite recently, COVID-19. If there was a health epidemic, the owner or workers might become too sick to carry on trading or working, at least for some time. This would affect formal and informal businesses differently. The effect of the health epidemic on a formal business. If the owner or worker is unable to work as a result of health problems, other employees in the business can take over the job. The owner and employees often have a medical aid, which pays towards their medical expenses. Employees of formal businesses are usually covered by the UIF, which stands for Unemployment Insurance Fund, to which they contribute to each and every month. The effects of health epidemics on an informal business. Most informal businesses are owner-managed and do not employ staff, meaning that if the worker is sick, the business will probably have to close down until he or she feels better. The owner and employees are unlikely to have medical aid, which then would cover their medical expenses, meaning that they would need to pay for their own costs. People who work in informal businesses are usually not registered for UIF.
The impact of COVID-19 on business is, of course, massive, not just in South Africa, but around the world. Most businesses are running at major losses. Let's try and find out the extent of what is going to happen with economist and analyst Maudie Swane. Maudie, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. So let's talk about the impact in particular on South African businesses. We've seen some restaurants even deciding to shut their doors.
Yeah, Shahan, I mean, we are in the midst of a storm, a perfect storm, where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of panic, there's a lot of things that we still don't know because, you know, you've got to understand, we still don't know how far and how long this pandemic is going to last. So the impact, the real economic impact is only going to be known until we know for sure as to how long this is going to carry on for. But it's certainly very significant. It's massive. I mean, you look across a number of other countries as well, just the impact that it's having. Literally all countries are now locking down and not allowing visitors to come in. The economic activity is on a standstill. So it's going to be very massive. It's to quantify it, this, I think, is still very early, but we're certainly going to know in about a month or two just how severe this is going to be.
Of course, you'll see fewer people going out to restaurants, etc. And if they do close their doors, what's the likelihood of them having to shut down after a month of not having any business?
Very, very high. I think a lot of businesses are certainly going to be under a lot of pressure, and we are going to see some of the businesses really closing down permanently because to recover, particularly if you have to close down the business for a month or two. We're already operating in a very difficult economic space where business is under a lot of pressure, and I think this virus couldn't have come out at a very bad time. And I think there will be some casualties. A number of businesses that were already weak are going to become weaker. I think it's a time where it's very challenging. We need to see the government pulling from all sectors and try and support some of the small businesses. They need to come up with measures to support some of the small businesses. It has to be a concerted effort across everyone. The financial sector, the banks needs to work with some of the small entrepreneurs to make sure that they allow them the space. If they default on a month or two, I think they should not be harsh or take harsh steps. There should be a room for them to give them a little bit of time to be able to recover, because this is this is very massive.
Yeah, so of course we see in Italy, for instance, some banks are saying you don't have to pay your mortgage for a couple of months. Do you think South African banks will actually go that far and give people some relief?
It's a good measure, but you know, it's definitely a good plan that they have. We need to look into those methods and make sure that we really work together as an economy, because the pressure, it's massive, and I think it's going to be felt for many months to come. You know, the number of other, you know, businesses where, you know, they rely heavily on people moving around. For example, if you take the taxifiers of this world, the Ubers of this world, those are some of the companies that, you know, those drivers that were making an income. If they can't get customers between point A and B, if there are no customers, you know, using their services, they are going to be under a lot of pressure. So we need to really come up with measures and make sure that we support such businesses. They're not the only ones. The restaurants, people are not, I think they're going to stay away as they continue to really take steps to make sure that they don't spread the virus. Those are going to be negatively impacted. How do we support them? Those are the conversations that we need to have as a country and make sure that we support them.
Yeah, and finally, given all of this happening with businesses, what's the ultimate impact on our economy? And do we actually need to see the Reserve Bank cut interest rates like we're seeing happen in other countries?
Look, Shahan, I think the economic impact we know is going to be negative. As to how much, and in terms of quantifying it, at the moment it will be a pure speculation. I mean, if we just look at the previous pandemic, such as the Ebola, it has had a negative impact on economies, you know, to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. So you can expect the same here. it could be worse, especially given the fact that this particular pandemic seems to be a lot more widespread and it continues to increase. The likes of China have managed to really contain it. And I think the good thing, perhaps, for the countries that are really feeling it after the likes of China, I think they need to quickly learn from how the likes of China managed to really contain it and make sure that they take those steps and measures to make sure that they contain this virus. And it's one that they need to move, unfortunately, with speed, because this virus is one that is obviously spreading at an aggressive speed. So if the countries are slower than the likes of China, we are going to see more of a negative impact in those countries.
All right, thanks for your time and your insight. Appreciate it. That was economist and expert Maudi Lenswane.
Thank you so much for watching the fourth revision video that dealt with businesses. Remember to subscribe down below.